Riva solar project. So recently a solar project was launched by our Prime Minister in Madhya Pradesh state in the Riva district, right? So we'll try to see this scheme in detail. First of all, this is the Asia's largest solar project. That is the first thing we have to know about this. This is the Asia's largest solar project. This is located in Madhya Pradesh. And also this solar project is a photovoltaic based solar plant. Solar energy can be used in two types. First of all, we have to know this. So solar energy can be used in two types. One is directly using the light of the solar energy for generating power. That is one way. The other way is using the heat of the solar energy to make energy, right? So heat by thermal way is one way of generating solar energy. On the other way, by using photovoltaics, that means by using the light energy of the solar energy, is also another way, right? So one is light energy, the other is thermal energy. So these are two ways. So solar plants that are kept in India are of two types. Photovoltaic plants are also there, thermal plants are also there, right? So we have to be careful in this area. Now, this Riva solar project, which is set up in Madhya Pradesh, is basically a photovoltaic solar plant, and it's a photovoltaic solar plant. The solar panels which we see, that is basically photovoltaic solar plant kind of thing. So this is the second thing we have to know. And coming to the solar capacity of our country, it is around 35 gigawatts. This also we need to have a broad idea. The target which the government has kept is 100 gigawatts by 2022. However, the present installed solar capacity in India is only 35 gigawatts, right? So India still didn't reach its target of 100 gigawatts by 22. Right? This trend also we have to observe, right? Because there can be a straightaway option saying India has reached, or the present capacity of India is 125 gigawatts solar energy. So at least we need to have broad knowledge about the numbers, right? 100 gigawatts is the target, but the present capacity is only 35 gigawatts. 100 gigawatts by 2022 is our target. And in this context, we also have to know that there is an India-led initiative called International Solar Alliance. International Solar Alliance. This is an initiative that was started by India, right? So this also we have to be thorough, right? Just see how, what all countries are there, what all countries are eligible to be a member of this alliance, that we have to know. So previously in this International Solar Alliance, only those countries that are within the tropical region, they were only allowed to join, right? When this International Solar Alliance was started by India, for becoming a member of this group, only those countries that completely lie in the tropical region or partially lie in the tropical region, that is 30 degrees north to 30 degrees south, right? In this region, the countries which are completely there or partially there, only they were eligible to join. But recently it was changed and said that any United Nations member country can become a part of International Solar Alliance, right? This was the recent change made to International Solar Alliance, which we have to know, right? And also there is a dedicated ministry. There is a dedicated ministry called Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. MNRE, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, right? This ministry takes care of all these power plants of solar, wind, etc. Not MOEFCC. We have another ministry called Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, right? It is not MOEFCC, but it is MNRE, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, that takes care of such solar-based and wind-based power plant projects, right? And in this context, we also have to know that there is another important solar-based scheme that is being run in India. Its name is KUSUM, PM KUSUM scheme, right? PM KUSUM scheme, Kisan Evam Uttam Suraksha Abhiyan, right? KUSUM, Kisan Evam Uttam Kisan Urja Suraksha Evam Uttam Maha Abhiyan. I'll repeat it again. PM Kusum scheme by Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Kisan Urja Suraksha Evam Uttam Maha Abhiyan. Right? So this is PM Kusum. This is basically about harnessing solar energy in the agricultural lands. Right? When the land is not being used for agriculture, when it is off season, the farmers can set up solar power plants and generate energy. In this way, farmers can get income from this solar energy, and also the solar energy can be used by the farmers to run their water pumps. It reduces their dependency on free electricity. Renewable energy is being promoted here. So this scheme also we have to know. And by implementing these solar projects and renewable energy projects, some benefits which we get is, first of all, it helps us to achieve our NDCs in the Paris Agreement, right? Under the Paris Agreement, we have some nationally determined contributions. These are some pledges taken by the government that it will achieve all this, right, as a part of Paris Agreement. So these renewable energy projects will help the country to achieve its NDC targets under the Paris Agreement. And also, this will reduce our oil import bill. Right? India imports crude oil like anything, right? We depend so much on crude oil. We depend so much on coal, right? All these imports are putting a burden on government's revenues. To stop that also, we are bringing or promoting alternative energies like solar energy, wind energy, etc. Right? So these initiatives will reduce the oil import bill, and also such kind of projects will improve India's energy security. How will it improve India's energy security? We are not depending on one single fuel like coal or crude oil, which will be over in a couple of years. Right? With the rate at which the countries are using them, definitely they are going to be exhausted in coming years. Right? So that makes us insecure if we depend only on those crude oil and coal. Now by bringing in new energies like solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy, ocean-based energy, tidal energy, by such new energies, we are trying to attain energy security, right? We are not dependent on one single fuel. We have many options in our hand. So in this way, energy security will be improved. And also this is an eco-friendly fuel, right? So all these are some points which we have to know with respect to solar energy. And there is another body called SECI, Solar Energy Corporation of India. Just find about it, guys. It's SECI, right? So find about it. That is also related to solar energy. So these are all points. So Rewa Solar Project, Madhya Pradesh, Asia's largest solar project. It's a photovoltaic solar plant, not thermal energy based solar plant. The present solar capacity of India is 35 gigawatts. However, it has kept a target to achieve 100 gigawatts by 2022. International Solar Alliance, this also, just go through it in deep. And also PM Kusum scheme by Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, go through that also. And some benefits of using this we have discussed. And SECI, Solar Energy Corporation of India, just go through that also, right? So these are some points in overall about solar energy. What all dimensions we have to touch with respect to solar energy, I just told you briefly. You can go deep. The second topic is Tiger Census 2018, right? Tiger Census 2018. So this was in yesterday's newspaper, if you have observed, saying that this has achieved Guinness World Record. This Tiger Census 2018, this basically achieved the Guinness World Record. Why did it achieve the Guinness World Record? Because this happened to be the world's largest camera trap wildlife survey. World's largest camera trap wildlife survey. Now there are various ways by which the population of a species is estimated. One of such ways is camera trapping method. So the Tiger Census 2018, which has undertaken in India, this happened to be the world's largest camera trap wildlife survey. That's why this has achieved the Guinness World Record, right? Now we have to try to see this in various dimensions. Now, when did it begin? That we have to know. So tiger census began in 2006. From 2006 onwards, the government of India started publishing this tiger census. And for how many years once is this exercise taken? 4 years once. So every 4 years once, tiger census is conducted in India. That we have to know. And which body conducts this tiger census? It is the National Tiger Conservation Authority, NTCA, right? National Tiger Conservation Authority is the body which conducts the census, the tiger census. Now, what is this NTCA? This NTCA is a statutory body under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. With respect to prelims, guys, we'll not get into detail. We'll just know it, what all are relevant, right? So tiger census, from 2006 onwards, they began taking this tiger census. 4 years once, they will be taking this NTCA, National Tiger Conservation Authority. That is the body which conducts this census. Now, this was in the news because it has achieved Guinness World Record for being the world's largest camera trap wildlife survey, right? So these are some points. And apart from this, what is the IUCN status of the tiger? We have to know that also, right? For the Indian tiger, the IUCN status is endangered, right? It is endangered. This we have to know, the IUCN status. And India has 75% of the world's tiger population. This also we have to know, right? India has the largest number of tigers in the world. And also the NTCA body which we have discussed, this conducts or this implements a scheme called Project Tiger, right? There is a scheme in India. This Project Tiger's objective is to increase the population of tigers, right? To stabilize the population of tigers. So for this, Project Tiger was started, and this NTCA is the implementing agency for that, right? This also we have to know. And one other important observation from this tiger census 2018 is that the tiger population in India has increased. It has increased compared to the previous census. So this can also be a question, right? They can say the recent tiger census 2018, one of the trend is that tiger population has decreased by 5%, they may say, but that's not the case, right? The tiger population has increased, right? So these are some points with respect to tiger census. Third topic which we'll be taking up is India's first dolphin observatory. India's first dolphin observatory, right? Observatory means it's like a place where some amount of scientific research will be taking place on animals, and also people also can observe the animals, right? Such kind of environment is created, that is called observatory, right? So India's first dolphin observatory is coming in the state of Bihar. It's coming in the state of Bihar in Bhagalpur district, right? In Bhagalpur district. This is for Gangetic dolphins, right? For Gangetic dolphins, we can see Gangetic dolphins in India. So for this Gangetic dolphins, first dolphin observatory is being set up in Bhagalpur district of Bihar. This is being set up by the Bihar government itself, right? Bihar government is setting it up, and already in Bihar, even before this observatory, we already had a sanctuary for dolphins. It's called Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary, right? We all know what is a sanctuary, right? So Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary, this is located in Bihar, right? This we have to know, because there can be a match the following where they'll give 3 wildlife sanctuaries and 3 places, and they'll ask us to match them, right? So we need to know that Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary is there in Bihar, right? And now they are also trying to bring first dolphin observatory also in Bihar. Now we'll try to see some facts about Gangetic dolphin, right? This Gangetic dolphin, its IUCN status is endangered, right? So this IUCN status is very important, guys, because many questions have come from this IUCN status, right? So any animal you see in the newspaper for any reason, you need to know the IUCN status, right? For example, 3 days back in the newspaper, there was a article about Assam keel snake. There was a snake called Assam keel, right? So just find out the IUCN status of that also. So if any such species are there which are in news for various reasons, then definitely the first thing we have to do is find the IUCN status of that and find where are they located, right? So Gangetic dolphins IUCN status is endangered, and these are freshwater dolphin species, right? These are freshwater dolphin species, not marine water dolphin species. They can't live in the seas or oceans, right? They can't live in the salty waters. They can only live in freshwater, right? The freshwater dolphin species, and they are blind. This is also one fact which is useful if we remember it. And they are blind also, right? And Gangetic dolphin is the national aquatic animal of India. This also we have to know, right? Gangetic dolphin is the national aquatic animal of India, right? And this Gangetic dolphin can be seen in 7 states. The 7 states are Assam, UP, MP, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Bihar, Jharkhand, and West Bengal. Basically, in the Ganga and Brahmaputra river states, we can see these Gangetic dolphins, right? We can remember that way. The Ganga Brahmaputra river states, the Gangetic dolphins can be seen. However, we also have other dolphin species in India. We need to be thorough with them also. Apart from the Gangetic dolphin, which has endangered status, IUCN endangered status, we also have Indus river water dolphin. That is one species. Other species, Irrawaddy dolphin, IRRAWADY, Irrawaddy dolphin, and also humpback dolphins. These species are also there. So these are 3 species other than Gangetic dolphins. So you try to find out the IUCN status and where they are located for these dolphin species also. If you try to see the 2019 prelims paper, there was a question which was asking, there were 3 options there, and one of the option is Irrawaddy dolphin and is found in Chenab river, right? A Chambal river. So it was saying that Irrawaddy dolphin is found in Chambal river. Now that was a wrong option. Irrawaddy dolphins are not found in Chambal river. Irrawaddy dolphins are found in Mekong river, right? In the Myanmar-India border region, there we can see this Irrawaddy dolphin, right? This question came in 2019 prelims, right? So Irrawaddy dolphin was in news during 2018. Gangetic dolphin was also in news during 2018. That's why that question was asked. Now, if I know that Irrawaddy dolphin is basically in Myanmar region, by simply eliminating that option, I could get the correct answer, right? So sometimes we may not be knowing all the 4 options, but just by knowing about one option 100% confidently, we can definitely get the answer for some questions, right? So some smart work is required. So find out about these dolphins also, right? Irrawaddy dolphin, Indus River dolphin, humpback dolphin also. So this is overall about dolphin observatory. So India's first dolphin observatory coming in Bihar state in Bhagalpur district. It's for Gangetic dolphins. We already have a sanctuary there for dolphins called Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary. This observatory is basically to promote ecotourism. The IUCN status for Gangetic dolphins is endangered, and these are freshwater species, blind species, and the national aquatic animal of India. These are found in 7 states, namely Ganga and Brahmaputra river water states. And apart from this, we also have Irrawaddy dolphin, humpback dolphin, Indus River dolphin, right? And there's also a prelims question. Please refer that also. Right. So the next topic we are taking up is climate emergency. Climate emergency are important words. Now, what is this climate emergency and which country declared the climate emergency? We have to know them. So UK, United Kingdom, was the first country the first national government to declare climate emergency. So what happens if a country declares a climate emergency? So the United Kingdom, by declaring climate emergency in its country, it wanted to put climate and environment in the center of the policy making, right? Any policy, any legislation, or any decision which is taken by the UK government, climate and environment factors will be thought about, right? They will be included. So with that intention, the United Kingdom has declared climate emergency in their country, right? So this is the meaning of climate emergency, and this is related to UK. Now also there was a rebellion or climate protests that took place in UK. It's called Extinction Rebellion. Extinction, EXTINCTION, Extinction Rebellion, right? Now this Extinction Rebellion is nothing but it's a protest for preserving the environment, right? It's a protest against the climate change. So this protest happened in UK, right? And Ireland is the second country to declare climate emergency. This also we have to know, because they might confuse us by saying Ireland is the first country, but it was UK. UK was the first country to declare climate emergency. Now this is important because environment, climate change, these are some burning issues which we can see in the news every time, right? So in such context, a country like UK declaring climate emergency, definitely we have to be aware of this fact, right? Because there can be a question saying Extinction Rebellion is related to, and 4 options can be given, right? Now we are in a position to say Extinction Rebellion is basically about climate change protests in United Kingdom, right? This much brief knowledge is enough. From that we can try to eliminate the options, right? So climate emergency, UK is the first country. Extinction Rebellion is one term, and by declaring climate emergency, they want to put climate and environment at the center of policy making. And Ireland is the second country to declare climate emergency, right? Now the next topic is a campaign. It's a campaign being run in India called Not All Animals Migrate by Choice. There is a campaign being run in India called Not All Animals Migrate by Choice. Now the meaning of this campaign title is that not all animals in India are migrating on their own. Some are being migrated forcefully. That means some species are being illegally traded. Though some species don't want to move from one place to another, we are forcefully moving them. We are illegally trading some species for maybe for their flesh, or maybe for their shells, or maybe for some medicinal purposes and cosmetic purposes. We are trying to illegally shift species, right? This is called illegal wildlife trade. This is increasing in India. The illegal wildlife trade is increasing in India. That's why this campaign was started in India. Its name is Not All Animals Migrate by Choice campaign. Now, who is running this campaign? We have to know that. The Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, WCCB, Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, and United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP. You might have come across these bodies. So Wildlife Crime Control Bureau and United Nations Environment Program, these two bodies together are running this Not All Animals Migrate by Choice campaign. This is against illegal wildlife trade. Now what is this WCCB? This is a statutory body under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, right? WCCB, Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, is a statutory body under MOEFCC under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. These facts we have to remember, guys. So this is about WCCB. Now what does this WCCB do? Its major function or mandate is to act as an intelligence agency for wildlife crimes. If any wildlife crimes are taking place, it takes care about intelligence gathering. It goes and inspects the trade consignments, the ships, if any containers have been brought into India, and if there are some intelligence to this agency that illegal wildlife trade is taking place, it goes and inspects them, right? So all these functions are done by this WCC. So this is about not all animals migrate by choice campaign. So WCCB, UNEP together are running this. This is for creating awareness against illegal wildlife trade. WCCB, MOEFCC, statutory body under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. And what does it do? Intelligence gathering against illegal wildlife trade and inspection of the consignments, right? This is about this campaign. Now the last topic of environment is Arogya Pacha plant. Arogya Pacha plant, AROGYAPACHA, AROGYAPCHA, Arogya Pacha plant. So this plant was also in news and is called as miracle plant. Why it's called as miracle plant? Because this has medicinal properties. This has medicinal properties. And it is endemic to Agastya Hills. These Agastya Hills are in the Western Ghats region of India. In this Agastya Hills, Western Ghats region of India, we can find this endemic plant called Arogya Pacha plant. Endemic means we can see those species only in that region. Can't see them in the other regions. That is called endemic. Now, Arogya Pacha plant is said to be endemic to Agastya Hills. That means only in the Agastya Hills, Western Ghats region, only in this region we can find this Arogya Pacha plant, right? So this has medicinal properties. Now, if we see the present government's policies, so much of importance is being given to the local medicine and traditional medicine, right? A dedicated ministry is also being run by the present government called Ayush Ministry, Ayurveda, Unani, right? Yoga, Siddha and Homeopathy. These are different traditional medicines, not allopathy. So when government is giving so much importance to such local traditional medicines, definitely any species which are in use for traditional medicine, we have to note them down and have knowledge, right? So that's why this Arogya Pacha plant is important. So this Arogya Pacha plant has medicinal properties. It's found in Agastya Hills, Western Ghats region, endemic, and it's called miracle plant, right? And it is used to combat fatigue, right? It's used to combat fatigue. Fatigue means it's a condition for human beings where because of repeated stress, right, a breakdown happens for the human mentally. That's called fatigue, right? Mentally or physically, because of extreme stress, a breakdown happens for humans. That's called fatigue. So to solve this fatigue problem, Arogya Pacha plant can be used, right? So these are some important information related to Arogya Pacha plant, right? So these are today's environmental topics. And now we'll go to the governance topics. So we'll discuss about two portals that were in news in the last year, right? So the first portal is Satyabhama portal, right? Satyabhama portal, SATYA, Satya, BHAMA, Satyabhama portal. Now going with the name of the portal, it might be very misleading, but this portal is basically to promote research and development in minerals and mining sector, right? This is for promoting research and development in mineral and mining sector. Now the same portal can be asked as a question and 4 options can be given, where one of the option can be about women empowerment. So that will be a very convincing option for us. These kind of questions we have to be careful, guys. So Satyabhama portal is basically about promoting research and development in mineral and mining sector. For that, this portal was created. Now, who launched this portal? Ministry of Mines has launched this portal, right? Ministry of Mines has launched this Satyabhama portal. This was designed by National Informatics Center. National Informatics Center has designed this portal. Now, what happens in this portal? In this portal, if there are any research and development project proposals, the Ministry of Mines will sanction them and it will try to give the funds, right? So this portal was set to increase research and development in the mining sector. So if anyone is willing to submit their research and development project, they can submit it through this online portal. The government will monitor it, sanction it, and if possible, give funds also, right? For that, this portal was created. And mining sector is very important for India because energy security is important. Coal mining, India is trying nowadays very best to increase its coal mining, right? In fact, our Prime Minister's statements, if we go through Prime Minister's statements, even he said that coal sector is also very much important to make India self-reliant, right? So it's a current topic also. So to improve mineral and mining sector, this Satyabhama portal was brought, right? So the ministry will be monitoring the projects and also giving funds to the R&D projects through this. And the full form of this Satyabhama portal is Science and Technology Yojana for Atmanirbhar Bharat in mining advancement. I'll repeat it again. Full form of Satyabhama is Science and Technology Yojana for Atmanirbhar Bharat in mining advancement. This is the full form, guys, right? So this is some information about Satyabhama portal. The main function of this portal is promoting research and development in mineral and mining sector. Full form is Science and Technology Yojana for Atmanirbhar Bharat in mining advancement. The portal is designed by National Informatics Center. It was launched by Ministry of Mines. It's for online submission of R&D projects, monitoring of the project proposals, and if possible, giving funds to the R&D projects, right? So this is the overall information about Satyabhama portal. Now the second portal which we'll be taking up is NGO Darpan portal. NGO DARPAN, Darpan portal, NGO Darpan portal. Now this portal's main objective is to create an interface. That means to create an interactive interface portal between the NGOs, voluntary organizations, and the government, right? So this is basically an interface portal between the NGO voluntary organizations and the government, the ministries, the departments, the government bodies, right? So this is like a connection between non-governmental organizations, voluntary organizations, and government ministries, right? That is the basic objective of this portal. This is an e-governance application, right? This is an e-governance application maintained by Niti Aayog. This is maintained by Niti Aayog. So this portal is being maintained by Niti Aayog. And also another important function of this portal is it electronically maintains the data of NGOs. Transparency will improve in the NGOs, right? So non-governmental organizations, we know what they are. They are NGOs, civil societies, voluntary organizations. They are like trying to do service to the people outside the government, right? Now, this is the benefit or the advantage of NGOs, but there are some challenges also. NGOs are being used for money laundering, right? NGOs are being used for corruption. Foreign funds are being pumped into these NGOs to affect the sovereignty of our country, right? So all these things are also being take place in NGOs. So transparency is required in NGOs. Now by creating such an online portal, transparently NGOs can be registered with the government. That is also there. And previously, this NGO Darpan portal used to be run by the Planning Commission. Previously, there used to be a Planning Commission, right? Now that was scrapped and Niti Aayog was brought in that place. So previously, this NGO Darpan portal was being maintained by Planning Commission. Now it is being maintained by Niti Aayog, right? And overall, this portal is very much required for good governance. Now, what is good governance? One of the way to analyze good governance is an active collaboration between government, private sector, and the non-government organizations, right? Government, private sector, and the civil societies. All these three should collaboratively work for the service delivery. That is the overall aim of good governance. So this NGO Darpan, by creating an interface between NGOs and the government, is improving the coordination or collaboration between the civil societies and the government, right? So this is a step towards good governance. So this is about NGO Darpan portal, guys. It's an interface portal between NGO, voluntary organization, and government ministries and departments. It's an e-governance application being maintained by Niti Aayog. Also, it electronically maintains and registers the data of NGOs. Transparency is there. Previously, this was under the Planning Commission, and now it came into the control of Niti Aayog. And this is a step towards good governance. Third topic which we are going to discuss is Smart Cities Mission. Smart Cities Mission. Recently, Smart Cities Mission has completed its time, that is 5 years. So when it was introduced in 2015-16, 5 years of vision was kept for the Smart Cities Mission. And now, by this 2020 year, 5 years was finished. So we'll try to see what are some important features in the Smart Cities Mission. Now, as we know, Smart Cities Mission, what is the objective of this mission? To improve the quality of life of the people. To improve the quality of life of the people by technology-driven urbanization, right? Smart solutions in the city. Improving the city's infrastructure for improving the quality of life of the people. Now, how is this done? Through technology it is being done. Wherever possible, Internet of Things is being used. IoT, you might have studied this in science and technology. IoT is being extensively used in this Smart Cities Mission, right? Internet is being used. So this Smart Cities Mission is an initiative of Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. This we have to know. This is an initiative of Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, right? That is the first thing we have to know. Second thing is the objective which we have just now discussed, technology-driven urbanization to improve the quality of life of the people. And there is an important component under the Smart Cities Mission, ICCC, Integrated Command and Control Centers, right? Now these ICCCs are important because these ICCCs, which were set up under Smart Cities Mission, have helped a lot during the COVID time. And even now also they are helping a lot to fight against the COVID in the major cities. The ICCCs, which were set up under the Smart Cities Mission, are really helping the government a lot to fight against the COVID pandemic. So this is in news, in current news. So we have to know about this, right? So ICCC means Integrated Command and Control Centers. These are set up under Smart Cities Mission. What is the main function of this ICCCs? Some of the functions are to coordinate traffic management. Second thing is surveillance. Third thing is utilities. Fourth thing is grievance redressal. If the citizens have any grievances with the government or the local governments, they can report to this ICCC. Right? For utilities, public utilities also, ICCC plays a major role. And for surveillance, right? CCTV surveillance also, ICCC plays a major role. And for coordinating the traffic management also, right? In the metro cities, traffic management is also an issue. So to coordinate the traffic management also, this ICCC was set up. Now, how is this ICCC helping to fight against COVID-19? Some of the things which ICCC is offering are CCTV coverage in the public places, monitoring the public places, which is very much important during the COVID time. GIS mapping, like geographical mapping, right? Tracking of the cases, tracking of the COVID cases, predictive analysis. Predictive analysis, that means predicting in advance which areas can be containment zones. For that also ICCC is being used. Even for real-time tracking of ambulances and health infrastructure. For that also, ICCC is being used. And for telemedicine, telemedicine is a term, this we have to know. Telemedicine means using technology for delivering the medical services. That means maybe through a mobile device or through a gadget, right? By using internet, medical help will be provided to the patients. That's called telemedicine. So all these services are being provided by the ICCCs, which are very much required during the present corona pandemic time, right? So CCTV public places, GIS mapping, tracking of the cases, predictive analysis, tracking of health infrastructure and ambulances, telemedicine, all these services are being offered by this ICCC, which were set up under the Smart Cities mission, right? So this component we have to focus because it's in news. Now, apart from this, the overall objective of smart cities is to upgrade the city's infrastructure. However, not all cities are picked up. This we have to know. 100 cities are selected for developing them into smart cities, right? Not all the cities. If there is an option saying smart cities mission is for developing all the cities of India, that's wrong. 100 cities are taken up under this mission, right? These 100 cities will be made smart cities so that other cities will aspire and inspire by seeing these 100 smart cities, so that they will also develop by adopting best practices. That is the strategy of the government, right? By developing 100 cities, it wants to spread this development to the other cities also, right? This is the strategy of the government. And the smart city has three broad approaches: retrofitting, redevelopment, and greenfield. These are the three terms. Retrofitting means already a particular infrastructure is there in a city. To upgrade it is called retrofitting, right? Redevelopment means already an infrastructure is there, changing something in an infrastructure more than 50%, right? If there is a building and you want to make that building an eco-friendly building, you want to put all the solar panels, then that is called retrofitting. If you want to completely change the design of the building so that it will be more eco-friendly, that is called redevelopment. And the third component is greenfield. That means building a new building which is eco-friendly, a new building which was not existing before. That is called greenfield, right? So these three components are there. Retrofitting is there. That means making small changes to the already existing infrastructure. Redevelopment is also there, right? Greenfield projects are also there. Area-based development model is related to smart cities mission, right? Area-based development model. In one of the test series, I happened to see a question where they directly asked, area-based development model is related to option A, Jal Jeevan mission, option B, smart cities mission, option C, Swachh Bharat mission, option 4, some other scheme. So area-based development model is related to smart cities mission, right? And the last thing about this is the smart cities mission is about developing the cities. However, local bodies are not the implementing agencies of the smart cities mission, right? We should not get confused here. Local bodies are not the implementing agencies for the smart city mission. The municipalities are not the implementing agency for the smart city mission. The central government has kept a special purpose vehicle, SPV, special purpose vehicle in every smart city. So all the 100 cities which the government has selected, in these cities, the government is implementing the smart cities mission through special purpose vehicles and not through municipalities. That is one area where we have to focus. And this is a centrally sponsored scheme, right? This is a centrally sponsored scheme. So these are all the things about smart cities mission. I'll just brush them out. So this is an initiative of Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Overall objective is to improve the quality of life of the people, technology driven urbanization, sustainable urbanization, Internet of Things related urbanization. One of the important component is ICCC, Integrated Command and Control Centers. This ICCC's objectives is traffic management controlling, surveillance, utilities and grievance redressal. This ICCC was very much in use to fight against the COVID pandemic. That's why we have to focus. Some of the areas where ICCC has helped is CCTV public places, GIS mapping, tracking of the cases, predictive analysis, real-time tracking of ambulances, telemedicine. This is a centrally sponsored scheme and 100 cities are selected. Not in all cities, smart cities mission is being taken up. Retrofitting, redevelopment and greenfield. These are the three approaches under the scheme. Area-based development model is the approach of this scheme, and not local bodies but special purpose vehicles are the implementing agencies, right? So these are all the points about smart cities mission. I tried to give you almost all the points related to smart cities. If you find any other points interesting, please note that down also. Strategic partnership policy. This is related to defense acquisition, defense infrastructure acquisition. What is the strategic partnership policy? Now, even recently, there was a report by CIPRI. There is an organization called CIPRI. Just find it out, guys. So this CIPRI body has given a report where it says that India is the second world largest arms importer, right? World's second largest arms importer, defense importer. It means we are importing so much defense equipments into our country. We are not manufacturing them, right? We are simply importing them from Russia, US, Israel, and many other countries. So this is one of the problem for India, because defense equipments are very strategic equipments and we cannot simply import them. It's better if we prepare them on our own. It's better if we manufacture on our own, right? Self-reliance in defense sector is very much important. Now for that, we need good technologies like the other countries. We need good infrastructure like the other countries. We need good investments which the other countries have. So for all this, we need private companies. So to encourage private companies in defense manufacturing, this strategic partnership policy was brought, right? If we see the present scenario, only 4 important defense public sector units are manufacturing the defense equipments. And that too, they are not able to manufacture all the defense requirements of the Army, Navy and the Air Force. That's why we are importing. Now, if we bring in private people also, it will definitely improve us by bringing in more investments, and we can manufacture better defense equipments, right? So with this objective, strategic partnership policy is being taken up. Now, what is this policy? Before we discuss this policy, we'll try to see this in a story. The strategic partnership policy means, assume India is buying Rafale fighter jets from France, right? There is a France company called Dassault Aviation. That company is giving us Rafale fighter jets, right? So here, the Dassault Aviation, which is the French company, that is called Original Equipment Manufacturing Company, OEM. OEM, Original Equipment Manufacturing Company. Now, what rule India kept under this strategic partnership policy is, okay, we'll give the money, we'll buy those fighter jets. But the Dassault Aviation Company has to tie up with another private company in India to manufacture those Rafale jets, right? We are buying them from the French, but we will manufacture them in India. They will be manufactured by a private company in collaboration with the Dassault Aviation from where we are buying, right? This is the strategic partnership policy, guys. Any defense equipment we try to buy from another country, we put this condition that that country has to manufacture these defense equipments which we are buying in our country by our own company. It may be a public sector company or a private company, right? So this is the overall concept of strategic partnership policy. OEM means Original Equipment Manufacturer. That is the company which is selling us the defense equipment. SP, Strategic Partner. Strategic Partner means the company in our country with which this OEM is collaborating. right? The SP is the company which will produce these defense equipments. So what's the benefit in this? Technology transfer will take place. Now the Dassault Aviation French company has to share its technology with one company in our country. Now that company in our country will also know how to manufacture defense equipments. In this way, defense manufacturing will improve in our country, right? So this is the overall philosophy behind strategic partnership policy. This is to finally achieve self-reliance in defense sector, right? So strategic partnership policy related to defense infrastructure acquisition. This was recommended by Dhirendra Singh Committee. This was recommended by Dhirendra Singh Committee. Now questions on committees can be like this. They can say Dhirendra Singh Committee recently seen in the news is related to, right? Or they might, in economy, we might be having many committees, right? Shanta Kumar Committee for FCA reforms, Bimal Jalan Committee for Economic Capital Framework, Urjit Patel Committee for Monetary Policy Committee. So in this way, some committees are there. Tarapur Committee for Foreign Portfolio, for Capital Currency Convertibility, right? In this way, number of committees are there. So we have to try to at least have a broad idea about which committee deals with what things, right? So this is important. Like recently in this year's budget, the direct tax code was introduced, right? The direct tax slabs were changed. This we all know. Now that was brought on which committee's recommendations? That we have to know. It was Akhilesh Ranjan committee, right? So we'll try to focus on the slabs. We'll try to focus on the brackets on which the tax is applied, but we'll try to forget about this committee, right? This committee also is important. Like this is one dimension from where we have to analyze the topic, right? So this is about strategic partnership, and these are the topics for today, guys. And if you see today's newspaper, there are some things which we have to focus for prelims. For example, there was Padmanabha Swami temple in the news, right? There was a judgment by the court about this Padmanabha Swami temple. Just find it out. Where is it located? In which district? In which state? Right? Is it a UNESCO heritage site or not? Right? Because this Padmanabha Swami temple is in news, they can give two options, saying the first option is Padmanabha Swami temple is located in Tamil Nadu, and Padmanabha Swami temple is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Just find it out. Where is it located and where is it, right? It's located in Kerala, guys. It's located in Kerala. So try to get some details about Padmanabha Swami temple. The second thing is, there is a place in news called Chushul. 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 This is the place where India and China are planning to continue their disengagement border talks. Border disengagement talks. So where is this Chushul? This Chushul is in China, or this Chushul is in India, or is it on the India side of LAC, or is it in the China side of LAC? Just find it out, right? They can play with this geography. The third thing is Chabahar Port. Chabahar Port was also in news today, right? Chabahar Port is in Iran. India and Iran planned to construct this Chabahar Port so that India can access Afghanistan through Iran, right? So that Iran will be a gateway to Afghanistan and Central Asia. For that purpose, India promised Iran that it will construct a port in Iran, which is called Chabahar Port. It's also called Shahid Beheshti Port. But now Iran is saying that it is dropping India from this project. And Iran is collaborating with China to construct this port. So that's why we have to know about this port also, right? Where is it located? In which country is it located? Who are the partners for this? So all these things we have to know, right? Chabahar Port. Where is it located? Is it located in the Red Sea? Or is it located in the Persian Gulf? Or is it in the Arabian Sea, right? So these things also we have to know. And aircraft carriers were also in today's news. Just find about them. Today's Hindu newspaper, aircraft carriers were also there. 2 aircraft carriers are there for India. Just find out the names. And there was a Supreme Court judgment on Amarnath Yatra also. So just find out what is this Amarnath Yatra, how it happens. So this, by telling these topics and the dimensions, I just want to guide you, like tell you in what ways we have to study a topic for prelims, right? And there is Xinjiang province, which is related to China, right? There is some issue going on there. So we have to know that Xinjiang belongs to China. And Warsaw Pact, Warsaw. This Warsaw place is also important. It has so much historical significance, right? This is in Poland, that we have to know. And coming to economics, consumer price index for June, for the June month was released, right? Retail inflation and food inflation have increased to 6%. Now during the corona time also, in the month of June, the inflation numbers have gone up. So this trend we have to know. And also we have to know what is the consumer price index. What are the different ways we can measure inflation? CPI is one, right? WPI is there, wholesale price index is there, that is one way. PPI is there, producer price index, that is one way. GDP deflator is there, that is one way of measuring the inflation, right? Just find out how inflation is measured in the country. What are, just now I mentioned, right? CPI, WPI, PPI, GDP deflator. Just find out how are these calculated and which ministry releases. Find out that also, right? So these are some topics in today's newspaper.